What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the spot where we kick back and react to all kind of different things. Alright, so what we got going on today? We're about to get into another science video. This one, well, it looks like they rebranded themselves. It was the Science of Science Fiction, but now they're calling their channel Science Unbound. Either way, the videos that we checked out before were nice. Let's go ahead and see what this one is about. This one is, what would a generational spaceship actually look like? Interesting, because we think about stuff like Star Trek and Space Voyager shows and all kinds of stuff like that, where it is like a colony of people moving around space. So what would that actually be like? Let's check it out. Let's go.
People have long dreamed of traveling through the stars and colonizing different worlds. Humanity never changes. Many scientists remain hopeful that future technology will give us practical ways to travel long distances, such as the discovery of wormholes or the ability to travel at speeds close to the speed of light. Unfortunately, these practical methods of traversing the universe may be hundreds or perhaps thousands of years away. So, but what about the impractical solution? That is the idea behind generation ships, a giant spaceship designed to travel long distances at speeds which we're currently capable of. This would obviously take quite a while, with journeys taking hundreds or even thousands of years. As such, a generation ship would need to be able to support human life for a trip taking multiple generations, hence the name. While it's not the ideal case scenario for colonizing the stars, it's certainly the method which we're closest to attaining. If the entire world got together and decided to make pooling their resources to build a generation ship a priority, we're already pretty close to the technology we need. At least in theory we are. There are a number of technological hurdles that need to be overcome, but these are absolutely tiny in comparison to the hurdles of, well, making a wormhole. So,
Not even close for making a wormhole. So yeah, I see where you're coming from on that one. Oh man. But now the idea of the entire world coming together for one task, yeah, we don't really see that happening no time soon, but interesting. So we're not that far off from being able to do it in theory.
What exactly would a generational spaceship actually look like? What's currently holding us back? And is building one even actually a good idea?
I have a feeling it said probably not.
The design. Visually, a generation ship wouldn't look anything like you might traditionally think of when you think of a ship. Because of the importance of replicating Earth's gravity, it would look a lot more like Deep Space Nine rather than the Starship Enterprise. The habitable portion of the generation ship would need to be a long, rotating cylinder that generated centripetal force equivalent to Earth's gravity. It would also have to be big, and we'll get to exactly how big a little bit later, but let's just—
I'm pretty sure massive. But yeah, I get that. You don't want to take us out of our environment completely. The way we look, the way we act, the way we move, who we are is a product of the fact that we live on this planet. And if we left the conditions completely, that would, I'm not even sure if we would survive that. So yeah, you would have to replicate our environment. Just like how we do like fish tanks, we got to replicate their environment so that they don't die in our fish tank. So same thing with us. A giant spaceship is basically like a giant fish tank. You got to make sure that it's set up properly to support us. So yeah, gravity, we need that.
Just say it would be about twice as large as the tallest buildings that humans have ever built in order to support the entire colony of people living aboard. Like I say, more fascinating details a little bit later. Now, this does raise an interesting question. Exactly how many people do we need to live on this generation ship? Given the need for genetic diversity, there's not really an easy answer for this. The ideal case scenario puts it at just under 100 people. This assumes that the people are genetically tested beforehand to ensure as heterogeneous population as possible and that nothing particularly bad happens during the ship's extremely long voyage. The most pessimistic estimates put the minimum number well into the thousands based on the assumption that there will be at least one catastrophic loss of population, such as from a disease on board the ship. While those are the extremes, most estimates use a starting population of about 500. This is more than enough to ensure the necessary level of genetic diversity in the face of some unforeseen hardships, and it just kind of assumes that some unstoppable pestilence isn't going to eradicate 90% of the population. So, with our population set of 500 people, we're going to need somewhere for them to live. Now, obviously, they'll be living on the spaceship, but we'll need to allot some amount of space specifically.
I feel like you could have did a higher number than that. I'm like, I get that 500 is like a baseline, but shoot, we have more people than that on our cruise ships. So it's like, I don't know. I feel like we could have did with a higher number than that, but all right.
For living quarters. There'll also be, a space needed for everything else. The whole point of a generation ship is that it has a far-off destination and is going to get there eventually. Then there are no pit stops or refueling points along the way, so the ship needs to contain everything it will need for the entire journey. One of the major concerns, of course, is food. Even if we could pack enough food onto a ship to last 500 people for 1,000 years, it would all eventually spoil. The ship needs to be capable of producing its own food to keep the crew sustained. A big part of this would be aeroponic farming to grow crops that are a combination of high-yield, nutrient-rich, and calorie-dense foods. The colony can expect to eat an awful lot of beans, potatoes, and tomatoes. There will also be traditional farming to provide meat, fish, and dairy to the passengers. Surprisingly, all of this agriculture wouldn't actually take up as much space as you might think. According to a paper by Dr. Frederick Martin of the University of Strasbourg, the combined aeroponic and conventional farming would require just under half a square kilometer for a population of about 500 people. But there's, of course, more than just food and living quarters. You need control rooms, water, fuel, either spare parts or a facility in which to construct replacement parts, and anything else that you could possibly think of to ensure that the ship makes it to its final destination intact with the crew alive. When we take all of this into account, we can estimate the size of our 500-person generation ship. According to Dr. Martin's paper, the rotating cylinder would need to be a minimum diameter of 448 meters and a length of 640 meters. Now, that doesn't sound too outrageous, and Martin even mentioned that it would be smaller than the tallest building in the world, the Burj Khalifa, which is 828 meters tall. If we're going strictly by height, then this is technically correct, but our generation ship is going to exist in 3 dimensions rather than just one. The Burj Khalifa only has a footprint of 4,000 square meters, while our cylinder would have a footprint of nearly 158,000 square meters, over 3 times the size of the Pyramid of Giza. Granted, the cylinder is going to be mostly hollow, but the total floor space of the generation ship would be nearly double that of the Burj Khalifa. At this size, the ship would need to spin at 4.5 RPMs in order to create a centripetal force equivalent to the force of gravity here on Earth. Despite the large size, this should actually be pretty reasonable. It's not like the theoretical Tipler cylinder for backwards time travel that would need to rotate at billions of RPMs, so we're still well within the realm of reality here. And while our generation ship would be massive, it's still perfectly doable. It would be extremely expensive, but we could absolutely build a ship that large if we really wanted to.
And extremely expensive, yes, but expensive is like a subjective term. If it was really like all of humanity like trying to leave Earth, you know, say something about to happen and we're trying to get this ship so we can get out of here, you already know there'd be some douchebags that are trying to bring money into it. But if we could get past that, we could do it. We could do it.
So, what's stopping us? The technical hurdles. Now look, there are obviously a number of problems that need to be addressed with such a long-term space mission, and the first is gravity, which we should be able to handle. Living in microgravity has a lot of detrimental effects on the human body that would make a multi-generational flight impossible, but we can address that by ensuring that the spaceship rotates at a constant rate. That's one hurdle out of the way, so let's just hope they're all as easy as this one. The next issue is water. A generation ship would need to survive for hundreds or even thousands of years, and, you know, people be thirsty. Humans absolutely need water to survive, and our ship would have no plans of stopping en route to pick up some more. That means that either the ship needs to be able to create more water, or it needs to be able to recycle the water on board with 100% efficiency. Anything less,
the recycling to 100% efficiency would be like our best bet. Even that's difficult to do. So interesting. Would it be possible to store enough water? I mean, we'd run out eventually, but yeah, we definitely need to be able to recycle it. But when you consider what we wouldn't be able to, like the actual waste at the end, maybe if we stored enough water over time, we wouldn't run out. I don't know. Maybe we would anyway.
Less than 100%, and the water will eventually run out. Creating water, likely not an option. It is technically possible to combine hydrogen and oxygen atoms together to create water molecules, but it is dangerous. In fact, it's explosive. Much like scientists turning lead into gold.
Leave it up to nature. Don't try to do it yourselves. Leave it up to nature. Ah, man, the fact that you could blow yourself up trying to create water is absolutely insane. But hey,
It is something that we know how to do if we really want to, but it's not a viable solution on a large scale. That means recycling water at 100% efficiency is a must. The good news is that we're not that far off. The ISS recycles water at about 93.5% efficiency, which is a great starting point, but anything less than 100% isn't good enough unless the ship is going to have massive reservoirs of water while also, praying for the best. Similar issues arise with anything.
Because you think about it, if what is it, 93% what he said, that means 7% miss. So yeah, if that keeps on, doubling and calculating over time, then yeah, over time you're gonna still run out of water.
That could be considered a consumable, such as oxygen or fuel. With our current technology, and perhaps with any technology, some amount of leakage is going to be inevitable. This creates huge problems, most notably with fuel. You might be wondering why fuel would be a big concern hundreds of years after the generation ship had begun its voyage. After all, in space, it should continue to travel at a constant speed without needing extra thrust, so the fuel doesn't seem terribly important, and for a long time, that's absolutely true. However, once the ship reaches its final destination, it's neat to have a way of stopping, or it's just going to crash into the target planet at a massive speed. This, of course, would require fuel, and since rockets use hydrogen as fuel, this is a pretty big problem. Hydrogen atoms are so small that they can pass through things like solid metal, which would make containing the fuel needed to eventually stop and land on a planet rather difficult. And it's going to need a lot of fuel to stop because, well, the ship's going to be quite heavy. It's hard to estimate exactly how much a generation ship would weigh once it was fully stocked, since we don't know all of the technology that's going to be required. For example, radiation shielding is going to be of huge importance, as radiation in space is far more deadly than it is here on Earth, where we have our atmosphere to protect us. The easiest solution is to just make the walls thicker in the parts of the ship that are inhabited, but this is going to add some more weight. With all the information available, most estimates put a weight of a 500-person generation ship at around 400,000 tons. By comparison, SpaceX's Starship, the heaviest rocket ever, weighed about 5,000 tons when fully fueled. Building something as large as a generation ship may be possible, but actually getting it off the ground and into space is also going to be a major challenge that we probably aren't yet prepared for. But, once the ship's taken flight, everything's going to be fine, right? Well, we can certainly hope so, but
you think about maybe like with Star Wars, how a lot of their big ships never actually touch down on the planet. They actually build them out in space, and they keep them out in space, and they just use smaller ships to go from the ship to said planet back and forth. So maybe if we built one that wasn't meant to ever actually land on the planet, we could avoid the entire landing issue and the weight issue. I don't know. What do you think?
But it's hard to say. We've gotten so used to the idea of planned obsolescence that it's hard to imagine a vehicle continuing to function properly after hundreds or thousands of years.
It is hard to imagine thinking about how long our current vehicles last. Definitely.
Is going to be a requirement. Of course, the nature of cosmic rays necessitates the use of redundant computer systems in space anyway, so hopefully if anything breaks down, there will be time to repair it before too many things break at once. The human problem. So, there are certainly a lot of technological hurdles to overcome with our generation ship, but perhaps the biggest problem of all is people. Not everybody is cut out to be an astronaut, and it takes not only a lot of skill and training, but a lot of courage as well to volunteer to be shot off to the International Space Station. However, the people there all chose to make the trip to space. But what if it wasn't your choice? How many people would be willing to embark on a mission knowing not only that they would die aboard the ship, but their children would die there as well, and their grandchildren? And their great-grandchildren, and, well, so on, for a very long time. Perhaps they'd believe they were making a sacrifice.
Oh, I mean, it's depends on how you look at it. It's not like you're going on a ship to be shot into a star or something. You're not dying immediately. They're talking about you're just going to live the rest of your life. I feel like if the Earth was trashed and they were just stuck living here, just in every facet possible, yeah, let's get on the ship. I'm still going to live my life and die at an old age or whatever. They'll have a decently full life. Yeah. I mean, shoot, I'd be down for it. As I said, the only way it would be like, no way is if it's like an immediate death or, it's going to be something terrible that happens to us. But, this doesn't seem like anything that's too bad.
sacrifice for the greater good of humanity. But after several generations, that sense of purpose might be lost. The people aboard the ship would no longer have any concept of Earth, nor would they really have any concept of where the ship was headed. All they would know is that they were born for the sole purpose of keeping the ship and the colony alive until it reached some mythical destination that might not even be there. It's a huge ethical dilemma, but let's just hand wave that away for a second by...
Oh, that could easily be alleviated as long as they have all the information on the ship. You're talking about the next generation, but as long as you have all the recorded history of what we're doing and why we're doing it or where we're going, and everybody is fully informed on what's going on and why they were born there, I feel like for the most part it will be okay. You probably still get those people like, you know, why me? Why couldn't I have been born on Earth? I could just enjoy what it was like to live on Earth kind of thing. You're gonna get those, definitely. But I would feel like as long as the information is there for everyone to access, and so they know why that they're there, you know, and what they're doing, it wouldn't be that big of an issue.
Claiming that the new generations on board the ship would all be indoctrinated from birth to believe in the mission without question. This still doesn't change the fact that people could be unpredictable assholes. Experiments like Biosphere 2 tried to replicate a self-sustaining closed ecosystem. There have been multiple experiments with varying degrees of engineering success, but there is something that seems inevitable. Some people just hate each other. These experiments only lasted a couple of years, but people inevitably broke up into factions and despised one another. They were still able to work together and place the mission above all else, but they weren't trapped there for that long either. All it would take was for a single person to place their anger towards someone else above the mission that they may not even fully understand, and the results could be catastrophic. And that's not to mention that life aboard the generation ship is probably going to be pretty miserable. There would be no childhood, there would be no retirement. People's entire lives would be spent making sure that the ship remained functional, and they would spend their whole lives confined to a relatively small space. Job options would be limited as well. They would need farmers, engineers, doctors, and teachers, but there wouldn't be that much variety among the possible occupations for the people on board. People may not even choose their career path on their own, instead just needing to fulfill whatever role is most needed at the time. There's also another pair of issues that are easy to overlook. One is the development of a new language. Though the generation ship will undoubtedly have a way to communicate with Earth, these interactions would take longer and longer as the ship got further away. There also wouldn't be that much to say to each other, since there hopefully shouldn't be anything important to report before the ship arrived at its destination. With little to no contact with Earth, it's possible, if not likely, that the people on the ship would develop their own language. We've seen similar things throughout human history before, and it seems reasonable that language on the ship would evolve to a point that it became virtually unrecognizable. On its own, that's not a huge problem until they tried to communicate with Earth again, that is. However, it can exacerbate a problem that would already exist. And then there's the fact that after 1,000 years, or about 20 to 40 generations, let's say the spaceship finally reaches its destination, it lands on the planet, and they're suddenly met with an entire host of new problems. The skills required for life on a generation ship are very different from the skills required to colonize a planet. There would be no reason for people to have studied this stuff, so they would need to bring with them all of Earth's knowledge in digital form. Fortunately, that's not difficult anymore. Modern computer storage is incredible compared to where we were even 20 years ago, so bringing all of the world's knowledge to another planet should be the most trivial part of all of this. However, that language thing's going to be an issue, because if it's changed aboard the ship drastically enough, it's possible that no one understands how to read the information that they brought with them. Even if they could, colonizing the new planet is still going to be extremely difficult and require skills that they'd never considered before. Nobody would know how to mine or smelt ore. The experts in aeroponics would have no idea how to grow plants in soil. Countless seemingly basic skills would have to be either rediscovered or learned from the archived information brought from Earth. We could just...
I don't know. I see one little hole in his explanation, because if we were able to record all of Earth's knowledge, yeah, I do see them eventually creating like their own language or a variety of you know, what we have here and everything. But if we gave them, you know, all the information and made sure that they learn traditional languages that exist here, even if they just like to say that though they'll only learn to speak one way, but how many people know multiple languages? If we present that to them, it wouldn't matter if they developed their own language aboard the ship and that became their new native space language or whatever. As long as they had access to learn our languages as they still exist, then they should be all right. Now, there is one big flaw with that. The fact that our languages here are going to continue to change too. Like even now, as we, you know, how we speak English here in America is different from how we spoke English in America when we first came to America. And then it's drastically different from how English is spoken, you know, in other places. So it's like, if their language changes and ours continues to evolve and change, and talking about every language because it's just going to continue to happen, then I guess even with the knowledge of every language with them and everything, there will still be some problems. But I don't think the problems will be that bad. I still believe that with the information there, we still have a baseline to where we wouldn't be to the point to where we were like alien to each other, where it's like, oh, I can't understand anything they're saying. We'd still be able to figure out baseline communication, even if we wasn't able to communicate at a very complex level because of all the differences. I feel like if we have the information there and we make sure we use it correctly, it wouldn't be that big of an issue.
Hope this is adequately planned for, and there is some set of instructions on how to build a functioning society, rather than just giving them a bunch of encyclopedias and how-to books and just hoping that they figure it out. Otherwise, we run the risk of going to all the trouble of building a generation ship to ensure its safe passage to another planet, only for them to finally land and then waste several decades before finally figuring out how to build a f***ing house.
That's a very real problem right there. Oh man. So yeah, so many problems with trying to take a space voyage to another planet. And then the final one that he didn't even mention is just how far away it is, just how many generations we're looking at here. The biggest issue is that even at light speed, the closest habitable planet that we know of at this point is 100,000 years away at light speed. So that's a long time, and a lot of changes of humanity. Our human history, our written history doesn't even get anywhere near that far. So yeah, we're not doing any space voyage anytime soon. I feel like the only way it's ever truly going to happen is if someone actually figures out wormholes, if that's even possible. But that's going to do it for that one. So y'all know what to do. Go down in the comment section, let me know what y'all thought about this one. Let me know what you'd like to see me react to next. Hit that like button before you go, share this video with everyone you know, and subscribe if you haven't done so already, alright? So, till next time, take care of yourselves, and I'm out of here.